Today we're making this super cute hug shrug. To make the hug shrug, generally you'll need 3 balls of yarn, 100-gram balls. I am using this cotton tape in this nice self-striping yarn, and I'm going to be using a 6mm hook. It says 5mm, but that is for needles for knitting, so I usually go about one size up for crochet. I'm going to use a 6mm, and to make my chain I'm going to go up half a size. I'm going to use a 6.5. You'll also find a stitch marker very handy. If you don't have a stitch marker, just grab like a piece of yarn, preferably a different color. We're going to start by making a chain. You're going to want to make a chain that goes across the widest part of your torso, so around your back and around your chest area, loose. You want it to be loose, not falling off. Like when you're holding it, you don't want it falling off of you, and you don't want it tight. You want to still be able to wiggle your arms out a tiny bit and it just not literally fall off of you. So it's a bit trial and error, I suppose. Some you might make one, you might think it's too tight because we're putting a twist in it, so the top part here that's going to be by your shoulder is going to twist and go around your lower elbow area and then back around, so it does like an infinity. So you're going to need a little bit of extra room for that, but not too much because it'll also stretch its crochet. So do your best around the widest part of your chest, not actually falling off, but almost. I hope that makes sense somehow. Oh my gosh, how lucky is that? So using your larger hook, and you're going to want to leave a tail. We need to sew in our end or sew our row together when we're finished. So you're going to leave about 8 or 10 inches because you need to sew it. You don't need too much. It's only one row that you're going to have to join, but you also don't want to have to fight with your needle or join another piece of yarn. So leave a bit of a tail, make a slip knot, put your larger hook in. If you make your chain the same as you do your stitches, you can use the same hook. And then just make a chain that goes around your chest and your arms. When you are doing your chain, what I like to do is just do, I count sets of 20. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 18, 19, and 20, just so I have an idea of how many stitches I'm doing. Then every 20 stitches I'll put a stitch marker, and then you just have to count, you know, 20, 40, 60, 80, like that. And then write that number down so you know how your hug shrug fits, if you want to make one that's bigger or one that's smaller, or if it was just right. So I'll meet you at the end of your chain. I've done my chain and put my stitch markers every 20 stitches. So I just counted 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, blah, 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 20 and put a stitch marker. Repeat. I have 160 chains. Pretty sure it's too long, got carried away. So put it around your upper body, kind of loosely, just drape it. And that's obviously too big, so let me hold it like that. So I think this is about right for me. So see how it's kind of dropping off on the side, and hopefully you can see the back. I hope you can. It's loose, but I can move my arms. It's not tight at all. If I was pulling it out, that's cotton. It stretches quite a bit. But anyway, that's where you're measuring it. You don't want it so that it's just going to fall off. Like if I pinned this, let me try that. I'll pin it together with my stitch marker. It doesn't totally fall off, like almost. Like if I jumped or did anything funny, it would fall off. But I can move my arms out and it kind of stays there. Okay, so that's what you're going for. You need some grace, some give, some leeway, but that's how it is. So I think mine is 140 with a 6.5mm chain hook So 20, 40, 60, 80, 1, 20, 40. Yeah, so I'm going to take out these 20 stitches and meet you back at the workstation. So I'll take out these 20 stitches and I'm down to this one here, which is 140. So now say goodbye to your big hook, put it away so it doesn't confuse you, and put back on your smaller hook. So I'm using my 6mm now. You can also take out all your stitch markers. You're finished with those. You still need one. Don't like actually put them away, but you can take them out of your work. Into the 4th chain from the hook, we're going to make a double crochet. So 1, 2, 3, and 4. So into the 4th chain. So the 3 chains count as a double crochet and the chain 1 counts as a chain 1. So that is going to be a V-stitch. So now we're going to skip 1 stitch, and into the next stitch we're going to do a single crochet. So put your hook in, grab your yarn and bring it back, wrap your yarn and take off 2. So that's a single crochet. Skipping a stitch, we're going to do a V-stitch into the 2nd stitch. So double crochet, chain 1, and a double crochet. Make sure your chain isn't getting twisted around. So now skip a stitch into the 2nd stitch, single crochet. So you're going to alternate making V-stitches and single crochets into every other stitch going back along your chain. So double crochet, chain 1, and double crochet into the same spot. That's a V-stitch. And skip a stitch into the 2nd stitch, you do a single crochet. So you're doing a tall V and a short single. It's hard to see now. Looks kind of like a weird, I don't know what, roller coaster, but that's what you're doing all along your chain. If you're not sure how to do a double crochet, you wrap your yarn and go into the 2nd stitch, grab your yarn and bring it back, wrap your yarn and take off 2, wrap your yarn and take off 2. So it's a double takeoff for the double crochet in US terminology. Chain 1 and 1 more double crochet into that same spot for your V-stitch. So V-stitches are like the letter V, so you'll be able to see it in future rounds, but that would be your V, like that, I guess. Skip a stitch and single crochet. So go all the way back along your row, skipping a stitch and alternating between making a V-stitch and a single crochet. So this is going to be a V-stitch. And skip a stitch into the 2nd stitch, single crochet, and go all the way back along your work. Make sure your chain doesn't get twisted, like make sure you're looking at the V's, just kind of roll it so that you're always looking at your V's. And when we get to the end, I'll meet you back. Towards the end of our row, we want to end on a V-stitch. So I've just finished my single crochet. I am going to skip a stitch and go into the 2nd one with a V-stitch. So double crochet, chain 1, double crochet into the same spot. And then, because I don't want to do any more, I don't want to end on a single crochet, I want to end on this double, I'm just going to unpick this chain. I'll make a big loop. Unpick that slip knot that we started with a couple times just to remove those empty chains, and then pull that one tight. There. So now we've ended with a V-stitch, double crochet V-stitch. There was a little break in my yarn, so I just put a loop. I'll sew that in later if you're wondering what that weird bit is. And there's our tail, so that's handy. Now lay out your first row nice and flat, like a circle. Yeah, so you can see it all, and it's flat. There's no twists or anything, but what we do want is one twist. And you can see how much it shrunk up. You know how big it was on me, but you can see it's very stretchy. It has a really good texture, hence the word hug. Gives you a little hug. So this tail here, or this end of your work, you're going to flip it over one time. So now we have one twist on this side. And our tail is we're going to use that to join here later. But we're just going to keep working right on top of this first V-stitch we made, our chain 4 with a double crochet. So we did this is our chain 4, and there's our double crochet, and there's our V-stitch up here. So the next stitch we're going to do is right into this, the top of that V. See that hole in there? We're going to go into that hole and make a single crochet. So no wrapping the yarn, no letting any twists happen on your work, and make one single crochet into that spot. And then into this short spot here, this big hole, that's your single crochet. So into that one, you're going to do your V-stitch. So double crochet, chain 1, double crochet. Into this one here, kind of like where your V-stitch started, you're going to do a single crochet. So where it was tall, you're going to make it short, and where it was short, you're going to make it tall. So this is a single, so you're going to do a V. Going to make it tall. So double crochet, chain 1, double crochet. And where it is tall with your V-stitch, you'll make it short with a single crochet. So you can always just kind of look and see what happened down there and do the opposite. So single crochets get V-stitches, V-stitches get single crochets. That's a tall one, so it gets a single. So alternate this way all the way around. This row is easy to see because you're just doing opposite into that same foundation chain. And don't worry about this over here, we'll fix that. We'll fix that. What you can do, so you don't get confused, because it can be confusing, while it's still laying down nice and flat, and you still have an idea of what you're going to do, you can put a stitch marker from your slip knot onto that first chain, because that's where it's going to join up. That row is together up there. We're not going like that down, this one's staying up. So that might help you keep an eye on it. You don't have to keep an eye on it, but don't stress out about it. We're going to join here eventually. So keep working your way around now. Single crochet into the tall ones and V-stitch into the short ones. And I will meet you at the end of this row. So now back where we have started, we put that stitch marker in just to hold it together because we don't want to think we're going that way, which we can think. I've done that a couple times. So this row stays under. So just keep working your way over there. I've worked in that tail a little bit, so that broken yarn bit, so that's why mine looks a bit chunky and weird. Yours will not. So there is my double crochet. Here's my last one. That's going to be a single crochet. We'll single crochet into that guy. And now we're going to join. So I can take out my stitch marker. It's done its job for now. I'll use it again in a minute. This tail, that one, we're still leaving it. We'll do that afterwards. So now we're going to slip stitch this to join, just like we would normally, except it's a bit tricky to see what the heck you're slip stitching to. So you're going to go into the third chain. So 1, 2, and 3, and you're going to leave one chain for the top of your V. So the third chain of the 4 chains, slip stitch to join, and then chain 1. This is where we're going to sew together with that tail, that gap there. You don't have to do it now. You can do it later. So now turn your work. So here is going to be our hill. So we're going to do our single crochet into here, and here's going to be our valley. We're going to do our V-stitch into there. So I'm just going to slip stitch over to get into that space, just a loose slip stitch to get over there. Now I'm going to chain 4, 1, 2, 3, and 4. So that 3 counts as my double crochet, and the 4th is the top of my V-stitch, and 1 double crochet into that same spot, so that counts as my entire V-stitch, like that. I'm going to take my stitch marker and put my stitch marker on that chain, just so I know that's where I'm going to join. Now, into these mountains, you do a single crochet. That's easy. You can see those all the way along. And because we turned our work, we see these legs. I call them legs, so it's like mountains and legs. So into the legs, that's where we're doing our V-stitch. So into that single crochet, you do your V-stitch. If you haven't turned your work, you can't really see it. It's much more difficult. So if you turn your work, there is an actual hole. If you don't turn your work, there isn't a hole. You're supposed to go into that stitch somewhere, and it's frustrating because there's not a spot for you to go in. You're like, where do I go in? So if you can't see where your legs are, you haven't turned your work. If you've turned your work, you can see easy to do a single crochet into those mountains or the top of the V-stitch, and there's your legs waiting right there for a V-stitch. So into the legs, you see those legs there? That's your V-stitches. So that's the only trick, is finding those legs. So just make sure you're turning your work after you join every time. So keep going around, single crochet into the mountains, V-stitches into the legs or the valleys, and I will meet you at the end of this row when we get to our stitch marker. So you think we've gotten back to the stitch marker, but we haven't. We're on the other side. So we're halfway. So what's happening is we're only going to be joining on this half of the scarf, and the other half, or the shrug, the other half is just a big loop. So we're doing like a figure 8. So it's really good because you only have to do half the joins you'd think you'd have to do. So not joining yet, you haven't done anything wrong, keep going, you will eventually end up over here. So now we are getting towards our stitch marker. It's quite a long row, but it's a good row for like watching TV and not thinking about it, because you don't have to think about anything really. So into this one, we're gonna fit this, that's our last V. So we're gonna do our single crochet into there, and then slip stitch to the 3rd chain, 1, 2, and 3 to join. A little slip stitch and a chain 1. Now I'm going to move my stitch marker and turn my work. And now we could slip stitch into that stitch, just a loose slip stitch, so you're right where you need to be, and then do your chain 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and your double crochet into that same spot. You can do that too. See, so then that looks a bit more like a double crochet. So put your stitch marker back in, because that's where you're going to join. You don't want to worry that you've missed your join, because you'll see your stitch marker and not panic. Because these rows can seem a bit long. You're like, oh no, I must have missed it. And it is possible to go over it, like to not see you're supposed to join and just keep going in a spiral, and then you're a bit in trouble. So now single crochet into the mountain, V-stitch into the legs, and you just keep going all the way around. So you repeat this until your hug shrug is the length you want. I judge mine that I want it from the bottom of my neck to the crease of my elbow. Basically that's the measurement that I use for mine, because I'm generally chilly, so I like to cuddle up or be able to pull it down and hide inside of it. Get a little hug in the shrug. So keep going over and over and over. Keep moving your stitch marker. Remember to turn your work every round so you can see your legs. And I will meet you later on when something else happens or something to show you. So keep going. Do your stitch marker. Turn your work. You got this. See you at the end. I finished my hug shrug. For the third ball of yarn, I went up a hook size because I felt it was going to be a bit tight. I didn't want it too tight, so I went up a hook size for the last ball of yarn because these stitches have to go farther than the center ones because they're on the outside, so they have to go all the way up your body, down the center, back along, and up this side. So I've done my last single crochet. I will slip stitch to the third chain to turn that one into a V-stitch, chain 1, and turn my work. Same as usual for joining. Take out my stitch marker. Now slip stitch into the single crochet like we always do, and chain 3. 1, 2, 3. So this is going to count as your first double crochet of your edge. So I'm going to do 2 more double crochets for a total of 3, counting the chain, into the same single crochet spot. So that is going to be like half of a shell. We're going to join in the middle of that shell when we come around. So I'll just put a stitch marker there. And now I'm going to single crochet into the V-stitch. Wrap your yarn and 5 double crochets into the single crochet. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Single crochet into the V. Wrap your yarn, 5 double crochets into that single crochet spot. 2, 3, 4, and 5. Single crochet into the V-stitch, 5 double crochets into the single. So now you're just going to keep doing this all the way around, making your nice shells. That's 3, here's 4, 5. Single crochet to pin that one down, single crochet into the V-stitch, and then you can see you have these really nice shells on the edge of your hug shrug. You can do any border you like. This is the first time I'm doing this border on my hug shrug, but I think it looks really nice, especially with this yarn that I'm using. You can also decide if you're going to be using a smaller hook for this. You might want to go back. If you try this on now and you're like, well, now the edge is a bit loose, go down a hook size for your edge, and that'll just pinch it in and keep it from stretching out. So that is a choice you can make. I'm just going to keep going with a 6 because I want it to be like a casual shrug. Keep going all the way around. 5 double crochets into the single, and a single crochet into the V-stitch. So 5 doubles into the single crochet and single crochet into the V-stitch, all the way around, making these pretty shells, and I'll meet you when you get to here. So I've done my single crochet into that V-stitch, and now I need to do 2 double crochets into the next spot. I've already cut my yarn. I got all excited to show my students my hug shrug and thought I was finished. Didn't realize I hadn't filmed this, which is why it was still undone. Anyway, I'm going to try to finish with that much yarn. Let's see. So 2 double crochets into that one. Oh, bummer. So you're going to do 2 double crochets. Okay. Well, you do it how I tell you to do it. Don't do it how I did it. So I'm going to do 4 shells in this one here, so I get some extra yarn, and single crochet into that V. And now let's see if I have enough to at least pretend I didn't cut my yarn like a dodo. 1 and 2. I'll still just do 1 over here. So that shell's a bit smaller for me, but I think it's better than putting another piece of yarn in. So slip stitch to the top of the chain 3 to join, and chain 1 to secure your work. And now this tail, at least it's long enough I can sew it in. So that is your cute border going around your hug shrug. All the way around. Sorry about the sun, it's of all the time. Anyway, so that is the hug shrug. So weave in your ends and you're finished. I really hope you enjoyed this. So if you did enjoy this, please like, subscribe, and share. We have new tutorials coming up depending on my kids' schedule, but about once a week, every couple weeks, sometimes every few days. So please like, subscribe, and share. And thanks so much for watching. Stay hooked.